I was trying to play some video games earlier. I've been trying to play for like 2 or 3 weeks now. The main reason is because I set up my laptop again so that I can start editing videos and getting back into that. And I decided, you know what? I've been pretty busy at work. I've been doing a lot of things right, so why don't I celebrate by playing some video games? The only issue is I forgot how hard it is for me to do anything. Let me explain what I'm saying. I want to tell you guys the story of how one heroin overdose changed my entire life, and my body was never the same after that. I'm alive today, so thank God for that. I can make this video. Heroin didn't kill me. I've overdosed twice in my life, and the first one, I was in the back of my girlfriend's car. I celebrated that night because I was clean from heroin for 2 weeks, and I decided, you know what, let's not isolate tonight. My girlfriend and my other friends, they want to hang out. And when I say hang out, I mean smoke blunts and drive around. And I decided, you know what, let me buy 0.2 of some heroin. I'll do 0.1 now, and I'll snort another 0.1 right before they pick me up. It was going to be a great night. Long story short, I'm in the back seat smoking a blunt with my girlfriend and, my ex-girlfriend and her friends and my friends, and I overdose. They have to pull over into a hospital, and the paramedics revived me with a bunch of Narcan patches, and then they took me to the hospital. But the story I want to talk about today is actually the second time that I ever overdosed and the last time that I ever overdosed, and how it changed my life forever. Let's start by saying that the first overdose didn't keep me away from heroin for a long time. I think a week after, I was probably looking to get high again. Actually, I remember the first day that I got out of the hospital, I was fiending to get high again because my first overdose, I was in the hospital for 5 days. And when I got out, I was still kind of dope sick, but I was grounded. I was living with my parents at the time, and I couldn't get out of the house, and I had no money, but I knew I wanted to get high. The second overdose was probably 3 or 4 years after the first one, and in between those 3 or 4 years, I was doing a lot more drugs, getting into a lot more trouble, being homeless here, going to jail there, losing this job, stealing from these people, robbing these people, and my life was a fucking mess. But every now and then, I was able to put together 2 months or 3 months or fuck it, even 6 months of clean time and keep a job and things like that. My parents let me move back home. I was working at a little sushi restaurant in our hometown, and work was going good. I was serving tables and I was having a good time doing what I do. And then of course I get back into the drugs eventually because there was no real consequences that I faced in my life at that point. Now, I faced consequences, but there was always someone there to bail me out, which was my parents. So I never felt the pressure or that life and death necessity to change because I always had a way out. So maybe I was 6 months clean at this time around, and I started fucking around with Xanax and heroin again. And the crazy part about this is, the last thing I remember is I was at work doing Xanax, and then the next memory that I have is of me in the emergency room watching Ant-Man. Now let me explain how I got there. What I'm guessing happened is, because I have no clue actually, what I'm guessing happened is I was at work doing Xanax, blacked out for a couple weeks, and then probably woke up in the hospital after I overdosed on heroin. Matter of fact, I know that part for a fact because when I woke up in the hospital and my dad, I asked him like, what happened this time? He said, dude, you were fucking overdosing on the couch. Your face was blue and you were throwing up all over yourself, and I had to fucking give you mouth to mouth while I was waiting for the ambulance to save your fucking life. I was in shock when I found out what happened. He said there was a needle, there was a spoon, and that's my dad. He shouldn't have to see that. He's never probably experienced anything like that in his life, as far as, well, obviously not. He only has 2 sons. I'm the only one that ever did drugs. So that was probably a fucked up thing for him to see. Anyways, I wake up in the hospital. My first memory was a really funny one. I think I was awake but not conscious for about 4 or 5 days. So I was doing things, but I didn't know I was doing them, right? The first day that I'm back alive, conscious, understanding that I'm in a hospital. Let me rewind a little bit. The overdose was so bad that it caused traumatic brain injury and a neurological disorder called Lance Adams syndrome. There's only about 150 cases studied in all of medical literature. So it's a very rare complication of cardiopulmonary resuscitation, and at the end of the day, what happened was a certain part of my brain was dying, and because there was no oxygen coming to my body, and a certain part basically never turned all the way back on, right? So when I first woke up, I realized I can't move my body. Like I wasn't even able to turn over on the hospital bed. So obviously I realized something was fucked up, but I was trying to keep it cool. I was trying to chill. I was hoping everything was gonna go back to normal, that it was just an overdose and my body had to readjust and reacclimate to being alive. I couldn't control anything. I couldn't do any kind of intricate motor skills or fine motor skills. I couldn't walk. I couldn't wipe my own ass. I couldn't turn over on the bed. So I couldn't control the remote to change the channel on the TV. So I asked the nurse, I see the movie Ant-Man. I say, oh, let me watch that. You just watched that 3 times in a row. So what was happening was, while I was awake but not conscious, my memory and my brain was so fucked up that every time I finished watching Ant-Man, I completely forgot about it right away. So then I would go to watch it again. When I became conscious, that stopped. So my memory was the first thing that I got back. But after I got my memory back, I was in the ER for 21 days, and it took me damn near the whole 21 days to learn how to walk. By the end of the 21 days, I still couldn't even come close to feeding myself, and I still couldn't wipe my own ass. I remember the first time I realized I couldn't wipe my own ass, I had to take a shit. I asked the nurse to help me walk over from the hospital bed over to the toilet, and she's helping me walk there because I can't walk by myself. My fucking legs are like jello. And I'm sitting on the toilet and I'm taking a shit. I go to grab some toilet paper so I could wipe my ass, and I realize that I can't grab any toilet paper because my tremors from the overdose and the traumatic brain injury were too bad. So every time I would go to grab something, it's called T-Rex syndrome, where my hands would lock up. And not to sound funny, but I kind of looked like a retarded person, right? And it's not funny at all. This is literally, it was what happened. So I couldn't wipe my own ass. You know, I think even when I got home after the 21 days, I still couldn't wipe my own ass. The only things that I really relearned how to do in that 21 days at the ER is kind of walk and use little electronics, right? And everything was still very difficult. When I got out, me and my dad and my mom, I moved back in with my parents. I was trying to feed myself the first meal out of the hospital, and I couldn't. Every time I tried to use anything I would start shaking. If it was anything that took too much thought, I couldn't do it. I could not write anything for probably a year after I got out of the hospital. I couldn't write. So this limited my ability to work certain jobs. Oh, one of the biggest things, obviously I can never really work at a restaurant again. I can't serve tables when I have these tremors that I'm dealing with. So my whole life changed. I had to look at life differently. I had to go into different fields. That's actually when I started working in sales and more of that kind of lane rather than just working at restaurants for the rest of my life. So it was kind of like a blessing in disguise. Again, Lance Adams syndrome, for most people, it's a really fucked up situation, and a lot of them don't heal as well as I have. Like, if you look at me like this, you can't really tell that I ever had tremors, or if I can still go to the gym, I can lift weights, I can run at full speed now, I can cook, I can feed myself, I could wipe my own ass. These things that we take for granted, when it was taken away from me, I was so fucking depressed. I was so defeated by life. But it's funny because that didn't even stop me from eventually starting to get high again. All it takes is one overdose, one more time trying to get high, to fuck your whole life up. This happened in 2016. It's been about 5 years. I'm about 85% back to normal as far as functionality. There's a lot of things that I still can't do, anything that I'm not used to doing on a daily basis is going to be really hard for me to do for the first few hundred times. If I have to put together furniture, or if I have to build something with tools, and there's a lot of small pieces and intricate things going on, I'm gonna struggle. But I'm grateful because I can fucking walk, I can breathe, I can talk, my memory works, I can still work out, I can feed myself, so I'm good. You adapt, you learn how to overcome your situation. But that's the story about how one overdose changed my entire life. It sucks, I can't even play video games anymore. Well, I can play, but I suck at them because I can't aim or I can't do any of the intricate movements. That would make me a decently competitive, you know? It is what it is, it really doesn't matter. Yeah, crazy.